Donald Trump is in Florida this morning after pleading not guilty to 34 felonies in New York City yesterday. Prosecutors say the allegations are linked to hush money payments made to adult film star Stormy Daniels and two other people who they say could also have damaged Trump's chances in the 2016 election. In a defiant speech at Mar-a-Lago, the former president claimed he is a victim and vowed to fight back. Major Garrett was in Mar-a-Lago last night and joins us live now from West Palm Beach, Florida, with more. Major, thanks so much for making time this morning. I want to ask about that speech last night. What was the mood in the room during that speech, and were there any surprises?
So the mood is important to think about in two ways, before the speech and during the speech. Before the speech, it was like an indictment party. As strange as that sounds to say, people were in a really festive mood. The music was light and bouncy. People were cradling martinis and glasses of wine and beer, chatting with each other, very happy about being there to support someone they regard as a persecuted political renegade up against the system. That's what more than a half a dozen Trump supporters I talked to said they felt like that evening. So the mood was energetic and anticipatory. And then the former president came to the podium and started speaking. And the room, an ornate ballroom, felt oddly quiet as he went through a laundry list of by now all too familiar legal and political grievances. I'm not saying the speech didn't land or they weren't receptive, but all that energy and anticipation faded as soon as the former president, the center of all that attention, came to the room.
I just want to point out as well, Major, that Melania Trump was notably absent last night and yesterday here in New York. What may that tell us about what's happening inside the Trump camp?
So no Melania, no Barron, the son, and no Ivanka or Jared. No, so they weren't there. The two sons were there, Don Jr. and Eric. A couple of other members of Congress who are long time in the trenches supporters of the former president. But that does suggest, if not a division within the Trump family, a certain distance about this issue, about the legal ramifications and the underlying allegations about what the former president did or didn't do or arranged or didn't arrange in terms of hush money payments, about parts of his past that he wanted to keep out of public view in the 2016 campaign. So those who were there and those who weren't drew almost equal attention.
Can you talk a bit about next steps in this case? What do we expect might happen? And could jail time be an option for Trump?
Well, look, jail time only comes after a trial and the jury unanimously reaching a verdict of guilty, and we're a long, long way from that. And the Trump legal team has made it very clear that they intend to attack this case on the merits and on process. They want to try to move the venue out of Manhattan. Probably will be denied, but they're going to try it anyway. They're going to try to have the judge removed from the case. That's probably not going to succeed either, according to legal experts in New York. And there'll be other motions that could delay things. The current schedule has a court appearance, or not necessarily appearance for Trump, but a next court hearing December 4th. December 4th. Why is that semi-important? Well, that would just be a couple of months before the first Republican Party nominating conventions, pressing this legal matter squarely up against the conversation in the Republican Party about who the next presidential nominee would be. And currently, based on all of this attention and fundraising that's gone along with it, the former president, Donald Trump, remains the Republican Party frontrunner.
Yeah, it looks like it's helping with his fundraising for now, but I guess the big question is, how long will that momentum last?
It's an excellent question, and it is, like so many other things in this fraught and historic political moment, unknown and unknowable. Will this wear well? Will this idea of being a persecuted victim of the system continue as a rallying cry, or will it get old? Will there be more Trump fatigue than you can already detect in some of the polls among Republican voters? Don't know. One thing we do know is that very few Republicans have yet to enter this race. Many are looking at it, but they haven't entered yet. And until that field gets larger and more specific, and some of those candidates start saying, you know, these problems with the former president are real, and we should think about that, he remains not only the front runner, but someone who doesn't have to answer, at least within the Republican Party conversation, for the allegations against him.
And Major, just really quickly, I want to ask as well how some other Republican members, people who could potentially be a rival to Trump in 2024, are responding to the indictment.
Very quickly, it's like this. You're supportive of the former president in the sense that if you're a Republican, you think this is, if not an outlandish prosecutorial attempt, something you think has something about it that is weak. The case being made against the former president is weak by a district attorney in Manhattan who almost all Republicans say is too obsessed with the former president and should be focusing more on street crime and prosecuting that in Manhattan. That's a very comfortable place for Republicans. Even those who may challenge the former president in the 2024 campaign are comfortable saying. What they don't want to say is either this is inconsistent with Trump's underlying character or get too deeply into the allegations themselves. That may come in a political context sometime later.
Okay, lots to follow here. Major Garrett, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.